Welcome back to the Many Toys Of, the show in which we go over the action figure history of various Transformers characters. And away we go with the Many Toys of Powerglide. Before we begin, a big thank you to Stinger Productions 07, Confish 04, Quill 538, Alex Johnson 4476, Spoon Coker, Falcon 10138, Neo Pro Gamer PL 312, It's Charlie Young, Scott Duncan, Orange the Potato, and an especially big thank you to Powerglide 1985, who didn't only request himself, but also gave a self-portrait that is being used as the thumbnail on this very video. Thank all of you so much for recommending the most skilled of all Autobot flyers. Now stop me if you've heard this one before. This Autobot has one big ego on him. He loves his own reflection and loves to boast. A lot of G1 Autobots can be described as a narcissist in one way or another. Sunstreaker, Skylynx, Trax. The difference between all of them and Powerglide is Powerglide was very rarely played for comedy. With Sunstreaker, he would be cast as an alien in Hoist Goes Hollywood. With Trax, we'd see his beautiful finish be ruined. With Skylynx, occasionally we would see him trip over his own words or not live up to his own expectations of himself. But Powerglide, in spite of his massive ego, was always depicted as being one of the most skilled of all Autobots. It's worth pointing out, Powerglide was the first of the Autobot flyers, at least the first one with a flying alt mode, and even though Trax and Cosmos would be right there with him, Powerglide was the flyer of the Autobots. He'd be the one sent on missions by himself. He'd be the one to take entire squadrons of Seekers on his own and come out on top. Even though he has no weapons in his alternate mode, it was his sheer skill as a flyer that allowed him to outmaneuver and ultimately outplay any Decepticon that came after him. Yes, Powerglide has an ego, a massive ego, an ego so large that you could fill any valley or ocean with it. And yet he can back up every single brag he makes. He legitimately is that good a flyer. And on top of that, he's a pretty good soldier. When the going gets tough, Powerglide gets going. Even though there were other Autobot flyers to come after him, many in fact, none of them had the same success record of this little minibot. And that is worth celebrating. That said, maybe don't celebrate Powerglide's personal life. I'm just saying, he definitely could have treated Moonracer a whole lot better. Between his personality and his unique role, Powerglide was almost destined to be a fan favorite, which is why it's such a good thing that his toy turned out as well as it did. His original figure came out in 1985 as yet another member of the esteemed Minibots, and here you can see that there's some good and some bad. In his alternate mode, Powerglide has very little paint. It's actually kind of hard to tell what the cockpit is supposed to look like. And alongside that, even though this is an actual plane, it's a Warthog, it's not exactly to scale with a proper Warthog. The fact that Powerglide is a minibot is yet another example of how wonky scaling can be in Transformers. When he's in his robot mode, you can see that the transformation is very simple. Fold the wings up, pull the legs down. The lower body is literally just the back of the plane. But look at that upper body. Not only can you move the shoulders, but due to his transformation folding out the arms to the side, he's able to fold his arms, or put them on his hips. Alongside that, he is able to rotate his head. Even though there are some very unsightly screws, especially that one in his forehead, it goes to show that even with limited articulation, you can fit so much personality in a G1 toy. Powerglide is sassy. There's no other word for it. If you're able to find the right angle and get the arms in a good position, you can convey everything about Powerglide's personality as early as his first toy. In Grecian markets, you'd be able to get the El Greco Powerglide. Same mold, just with a slightly different red. Powerglide got no love in the Beast era. It wasn't until 2004 that he'd even be reissued in the Transformers Collection 6-pack, alongside Bumblebee, Cosmos, Gears, Huffer, and Warpath. It is nice to see them all together again, and Powerglide actually is sporting a little bit better paint and a new Autobot sticker right below his head. A very divisive Powerglide came out in 2008, that being the Universe Ultra Class Powerglide. They took a Minibot and blew it up to the size of an Ultra Class figure. That said, this is really fascinating to me, because that means that Powerglide is actually now in real-world scale. The Warthog is a big vehicle. He would be one of the larger Autobots if that was his alt mode. Even the colors reflect the more standard colorations you'd find on this plane. I know that for the time, this Powerglide was not very well liked, especially because it just doesn't look all that much like him. Aside from the really excellent head sculpt, there's not much here that really shows off the original boy. But, in my humble opinion, this toy is so cool. Not only do you have his little heart show up, just as it did in The Girl Who Loved Powerglide, but he has a solid weapon, lights and sounds, a good transformation, and at the end of the day, he is a big, bulky, blocky figure. This is bang for your buck incarnate. Is it the perfect Powerglide? No. But it is a really fascinating Powerglide. I think that if this guy had come out maybe after a more faithful rendition of Powerglide, people would have adored it for just being a new version of the guy. Like maybe if there had been a Universe Legends Powerglide and then a few months later this guy came out, I think people would be much more receptive. But since this was the second Powerglide toy ever, the second mold made for him, and it's so different, I can kind of understand the pushback. Even though nowadays I'd say this toy more than stands the test of time. Popping over to Takara Tomy markets, you would be able to get this Powerglide in almost all red. Still not exactly show accurate, but at least more familiar for Powerglide. I personally think these colors actually look worse on the mold, but for anyone out there who wants this body with just a little bit more familiarity, this might be a good option for you. In 2009, there would be the Walmart exclusive Ultra Class Powerglide. This was Hasbro taking the Powerglide mold and giving us the most G1 accurate version of it yet. I prefer this red. It's a little bit duller, but also grounds the vehicle a little bit more than the Takara Tomy red. And on top of that, the gray arms remember the fact that Powerglide is supposed to have differently colored arms. I enjoy this one. It's definitely better than the Takara Tomy version, but I do still prefer the original. That's just me though. 2011 must have felt like 2 steps forward and 2 steps back for Powerglide fans, because you finally did get a smaller, more accurate, modern Powerglide. The issue is, it was the Dark the Moon Cyberverse Commander class Powerglide. Still a great toy, but undeniably in the movieverse aesthetic. I would argue that Powerglide wears the aesthetic well. This looks like a cool modern rendition of him, maybe like a Powerglide you'd find in IDW. At the same time, there were so many people who had a Powerglide shaped hole in their hearts, and what they wanted was that familiar Minibot, small body, big personality. And this Powerglide was definitely closer to that than the Ultra Powerglide, but it was still missing a lot of the creature comforts. There was a big outcry from people because this was as close as we were getting, and there was no telling when we would get another Powerglide. This was still very much in the time in which a bunch of G1 characters just weren't given Generations love. Keep in mind, it took until Siege for Shockwave to get a proper Generations figure. What hope did G1 Powerglide have? By the way, if you popped into Walmart this year, there would be another Powerglide in the Ultimate Gift Set 5-pack, and you can see this is just a green and red redeco. Personally though, I prefer it. I think that this mold looks so much better in these colors, almost like a Movieverse Zero from GoBots. I know that this seems insane nowadays, where basically every G1 character either already has a new toy or has one just over the horizon, but I do think it's worth pointing this out, especially during my era of childhood when I was growing up in the fandom. a bunch of G1 characters only got 1 or 2 shots, and a handful of characters just never got toys in the Generation style. It's a big reason as to why Third Party was able to gain traction so quickly. They were doing the characters that fans cared about that seemingly just would never make it to mass retail. And you better believe, with there being so much demand for Powerglide, we got a handful of good options from Third Party in very quick order. One of the first third-party Powerglides I remember is the Make Toys Bomber. And you can see, this is almost like a Generation-style version of the original toy design, which is great. I love the original Powerglide toy, and I think this one looks really cool in its own way, but there's one big problem for me. They were so accurate to the toy that they put the giant screw over his forehead. It kind of ruins this whole thing for me. Maybe if you had made that a little bit more like a gem or anything, just anything that doesn't look like a screw head, because this is a unique Powerglide, one that I would love to pick up, but I just know that screw is going to bother me. For a masterpiece collector, you could always pick up the X-Transbots Glider. This Powerglide's pretty solid, all things considered. Admittedly, there's just a bit of quality control things you should be aware of. He's very fragile, especially in a lot of his transformation joints. But overall, he's par for the course for X-Transbots. A great looking robot, a solid looking vehicle, and a bit of a nightmare transformation. DX9 put out Richthofen, and Richthofen, again, is interesting. Admittedly though, the proportions are very odd. Especially when you start looking at where the shoulder is supposed to meet the torso, you realize just how much open air is in the center of the middle of his body. It's a decent looking Powerglide, but not the best. Also not the worst, just so we're clear. It has a unique aesthetic, which is interesting, and I do enjoy it. I just wish he wasn't as gappy, is all. Of course, when we talk about third-party masterpiece, the name that's always going to come up is Fans Toys. And Fans Toys made Warthog, which is, to date, the most cartoon-accurate Powerglide on the market. It has the most paint, it has the most sculpted detail, it looks the most like the cartoon. Like so many Fans Toys figures, it has great presentation, great displayability, but playability is rough. Powerglide is well articulated, but is also fragile. The chips of paint can come off very, very easily, and alongside that, Powerglide can have a little bit of a nightmare transformation. A Powerglide that is way more up my alley is the Iron Factory Powerglide. Heavily stylized, looking like something out of IDW, they gave Powerglide just a little bit of heft. Kind of like Seaspray before him, this looks like a more rough and tumble version of the Minibot. And for me personally, I think it's the third-party Powerglide I like the most. Of course, New Age Powerglide is just a thing of beauty. I love the colors on him, he's so shiny! And he comes with very familiar accessories, again, a solid flight stand and the mask from Hoist Goes Hollywood. Overall, this is one of the more impressive Powerglides, especially when you consider the scale, which means that if you want to grab this Powerglide and put it on a Generation shelf, he'd probably fit in pretty well. Ending off on our smallest Powerglide, there is Dr. Wu's stab at Powerglide. This Micromaster version of the guy is really clever. Overall, Third Party has been very kind to Powerglide. I think at the end of the day, these are all solid versions of the character, none of them are obvious stinkers. But at the same time, I think that describes Powerglide's toy history as a whole. Even if some people dislike some of his toys, they all have something going for them. And continuing with that, let's go back to the official waters in 2012, where we can see the Transformers Gum Skybase. Now, the way Kabaya did Fortress Maximus in their Transformers Gum series was essentially they just split the guy into 3 parts, and those parts would each come in their own case. However, just to make sure that no one got gyffed, if you could only get one case at a time, you would get a Minibot to go with it. The Skybase came with Powerglide. Powerglide was also a favorite of the BotShots line, first appearing in Wave 1, as well as getting a repack alongside Skyquake and Jetfire just a few months later. In Takara markets, you could get the Be Cool Red Jet. Again, this is just Powerglide, but with a little bit more paint, making him look a little snazzier. In 2013, there would be a Creon microchanger of Powerglide, and I don't know why I'm focusing in on this. To my knowledge, this is the first time Powerglide's alt mode has been depicted with weapons, and alongside that, he's now sporting Seeker-style null rays. I know it's a very tiny thing to focus in on, I just think that's kind of cool. In 2015, Powerglide would be in the Creon class of 85 in the San Diego Comic-Con exclusive pack of the same name. Of course, the big deal for Powerglide this year was his inclusion in the Combiner Wars line. This Powerglide is effectively everything we ever wanted as collectors, a proper Generations Scout class sized Powerglide. And yet, he still functioned in the Combiner Wars toy line. He was packaged alongside the Aerialbot wave, and the idea was Powerglide could transform into a cannon for Superion. And looking at it, he turns into a pretty good gun. Like, the fact that this is supposed to just kind of be a BS third mode, it works. And then the plane still looks great, and when he transforms, that's just Powerglide. All the details we'd want are here. I know Mini Masterpiece gets thrown around a lot, but in all seriousness, this Powerglide impresses me a lot more than a lot of the third-party MP Powerglides, entirely because they got the character so well at such a small price point, and were able to fit in a whole other third mode. And it might not be a very good mode, but at the very least there are pieces that are dedicated to it. A viewfinder that doesn't have anything else to do in robot or jet mode, and yet doesn't hinder those modes. This Powerglide is honestly really impressive from an engineering standpoint, and it's even better for us fans. I still love this Powerglide. His articulation's solid, his paint is good, his sculpting is on point. Even though I would be happy for a new Powerglide, I'm not going to act like this one isn't still really solid even 10 years later. In Takara markets, you'd be able to get Powerglide in the Adventure line. Even though this is a more G1 accurate deco, you have to deal with the fact that he comes with the Adventure poker chip right there dead center on his chest. 2016 would be a year of oddities for Powerglide. For one, there would be a re-release of the Creon microchanger. A really fun Powerglide is the one that came in the Combiner Wars G2 Superion set. Keep in mind, there is no such thing as G2 Powerglide, and yet they made a deco for a potential G2 Powerglide. I really enjoy this. I like seeing what characters might have looked like if they had appeared in other lines. And even though I prefer the original colors on this mold, this still looks pretty solid. Of course, with Powerglide, it always goes back to the vehicle mode, which is why maybe it's only fitting that the final Powerglide to talk about in this video is the G.I. Joe and the Transformers Scarlet vs. Zartan Autobot Powerglide vs. Soundwave. This is a G.I. Joe Cobra Rattler redecoed into Powerglide, and it looks really nice, especially that metallic red. Oh my god, it looks good! The fact that it comes with the His-Take Soundwave, which is itself one of the better Transformers G.I. Joe redecos, it's a good 2-pack. The fact that Scarlet, one of the few G.I. Joe characters I actually care about, is flying Powerglide, just makes it even better. I really enjoy this. If you are a G.I. Joe fan, I would hope that this resonates in some way, shape, or form. And now that brings us to 2025. Right now, there are leak listings for a new Generations Powerglide. And considering that we have almost all the other first 2 years of Minibots in new toy forms now, I wouldn't be surprised if Powerglide was right around the corner. But in terms of right now, it's just speculation that we have to take with grains of salt. Regardless, Powerglide's always going to be around. Even if his next toy doesn't come out for 10 more years, he's going to show up in comics, he's going to be in the app games, he's going to show up in fandom conversations because Powerglide is Powerglide is Powerglide. And Powerglide is the best at what he does. And that's it. Powerglide is really fascinating to me, for one simple reason. His ego isn't being depicted as a problem. Usually, especially in children's media, any character that has pride or a sense of ego in any way, shape, or form, they're always presented as being haughty. You are building them up so that the fall is even worse for them. And yet with Powerglide, that's not the case. He's actually an example of being confident, but not overconfident. Yes, Powerglide loves to talk about how good he is, but he actually is that good. And he knows what his limitations are. Yes, he's daring and dashing, but he also knows the difference between being heroic and being an idiot. Very rarely does Powerglide put himself or anyone else in a bad situation, and when he is in a bad situation, he knows when it's best to try to just get away or call in for help. Powerglide's ego never becomes a hindrance to himself or his team, and in that way I find him really refreshing. It's nice to have a character that can show people that just because you take pride in yourself or something you do doesn't mean that you're inherently wrong or bad or going to make mistakes. Sometimes you have well-deserved pride about what you're able to do, and that's always been the case with Powerglide. He is the best Autobot Flier, so why should he pretend he's not? He is more skilled than the other aerial bots, or Jetfire, or Cosmos, and he fills a niche that none of them can. Jetfire is too big to go on reconnaissance. The aerial bots are too immature and irresponsible. Omega Supreme is too massive. Cosmos is too conspicuous. Powerglide knows when to stay quiet and listen, but also knows when it's time to get all the attention on himself, and he does so that other people can get away or make plans. Powerglide is able to steal the direct eye line of any Seeker. All of the Decepticon flyers would do anything to shoot him down, but none of them have yet, and if Powerglide has his way about it, they never will. But guys, I'll ask you, which was your favorite Powerglide, and is there a Powerglide you're trying to track down right now? If you would like to support me or the show, I'm on Patreon now. For $1, you get access to Moonbase 1, my Discord server. For $5, you can watch videos early or download videos directly from me. And for $10, you will become a producer. You'll show up in every video I make from now on, as well as be able to make direct Patreon requests to me. Powerglide is a great episode right now because, one, he's a fun character, but also this won't break the bank in terms of my time. I'm hoping to move on to the 11,000 subscriber special very soon. Grimlock will be happening this month at some point, and I got a few other big episodes that I'm looking forward to show all you guys. But in the time being, I don't really know who's going to be up next, but in any case, we'll just have to see what we get up to next time.